When will African leaders learn? For how long would Africa continue like this? During the 2023 African Leadership Ceremony with Mo Ibrahim, Kenya President Ruto was the first to bring to everyone's attention the fact that African leaders are usually treated like schoolchildren, without respect. In a speech that received a standing ovation and projected Ruto as a champion of Africa, stressed that African leaders are elected by their people and deserve the same level of respect as leaders from any other part of the world. Referring to the 2023 US-Africa Summit, President Ruto said that during the summit, 50 African leaders were present but were unable to have a one-on-one meeting with President Biden. He went on to criticize these types of arrangements where African presidents travel the world to meet with the leader of one country, stating that it was unfair. In his own words, there is a debate that is going to evolve. Like, for example, we have also decided that it will not be business as usual. We have these meetings: Africa-US meeting, Africa-Europe, Africa-Turkey, Africa-India, Africa-Russia, and Africa-Japan. We have made the decision that it is not intelligent for 54 of us to go and sit before one gentleman from another place. And sometimes we are mistreated. We are loaded into buses like school kids. It's not right. So the decision that we have made as AU is that going forward, if there is going to be a discussion between Africa and any other country, we are going to be represented by the chair of the African Union Commission. Although President Ruto is currently a Western puppet who says one thing and does the opposite, it doesn't change the fact that what he said was correct. African leaders are the least respected in the world, and this is evident in how they are summoned for summits by a single country. Think about it. Have you ever heard of a Nigeria-Europe summit organized in Nigeria by the Nigerian government, and all the presidents in every European country are expected to attend? What about a South Africa-Asia summit or an Egypt-North America summit? It has never happened, and if things continue the way they are, it will never happen. However, every country is always setting up meetings and organizing summits with the leaders of the African continent. There have been the US-Africa Summit, Japan-Africa Summit, Russia-Africa Summit, India-Africa Summit, and many others. And all of them have something in common. They always supposedly have Africa as their focus. In January this year, the Italy-Africa Summit was held in Rome and attended by more than 20 African leaders, including Western puppet President Ruto, where Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni outlined the Mattei plan. According to her, with this plan, Europe's relationship with Africa will change for the better. While the plan detailed over $5 billion in investment focusing on energy cooperation as a key area of economic development, the major part of the plan was to control African migration to Europe, and at the same time position Italy as a distribution hub for African energy. Just last week, the first ever South Korea-Africa Summit was organized, and guess where it occurred? Seoul, the capital of South Korea. According to the reports, this summit was attended by at least 30 African heads of state, and 48 African countries were represented. With the theme, "The Future We Make Together, Shared Growth, Sustainability, and Solidarity," the summit aims to elevate cooperation between South Korea and Africa. While the summit was said to be designed to be a comprehensive platform for a wide range of topics, including business and agriculture, the truth is that the aim of the summit was for South Korea to develop strong ties with African countries, which will grant it access to the critical minerals on which the South Korean technology industry depends. This was confirmed by the South Korean Principal Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Tae-hyo, who said days before the meeting that, for South Korea, which aims to become a global pivotal state, cooperation with Africa is not a choice but a necessity. Not surprisingly, the summit ended with the signing of 50 agreements between South Korea and 48 African countries, with several related to the mining sector. Notably, among these agreements were those signed with Madagascar and Tanzania to secure supplies of critical minerals for the Korean battery industry. Hyosung Corp, a South Korean conglomerate, also signed a contract to supply electric transformers to Mozambique, worth $30 million. In return for cooperation, South Korea pledged to donate $10 billion to Africa in foreign aid by 2030 and offer a further $14 billion in export credits to Korean firms wanting to enter the African markets. South Korea also signed a $2.5 billion concessional loan agreement with Tanzania, with the money being used to fund significant upgrades in the healthcare infrastructure in Zanzibar. A similar $1 billion deal was signed with Ethiopia to fund development in infrastructure, science and technology, health, and urban development. So, what does this tell us? It tells us that every country in the world with plans of having a strong foot on the global stage wants a share of Africa, especially in this era where the international community is pushing for a green energy transition. It's just like the Berlin Conference again, only this time, all these countries are trying to do it based on partnership. Colonization has been banned, so Africa can't be shared among the world powers anymore, but they can still have a piece of the resource-rich continent by entering into a partnership with African countries that benefits them more than it benefits the continent. And the annoying thing is that African leaders are dumb enough, or maybe not patriotic enough, to sign those agreements. One of the irritating things about these summits between one country and the African continent is that the summit is usually held in the host country. The US-Africa Summit was held in the US. The Italy-Africa Summit was held in Italy. The South Korea-Africa Summit was held in South Korea. And once the invitations for these summits are sent out, African leaders are always ready to drop whatever they are doing, pack their bags, and travel out to sit and listen to one leader, like school children. Like President Ruto said, each of these leaders will be given 15 minutes each to speak, and afterward they are gathered together like little children to take photographs with one leader. What a shame. Africa is the one that has something to offer. In fact, we can say that these summits are organized to woo African leaders to sign their resources in exchange for loans and financial aid. So, instead of every African leader going, "Why can't the African Union send representatives to discuss what needs to be discussed?" Aside from this, the question is, what has been the impact of all these summits? When you listen or read the excerpts of the meeting, you will observe that the host country usually pledges so and so amount of money, sometimes in terms of loans and other times in financial aid or even investment. For instance, during the just concluded South Korea-Africa Summit, the authorities in South Korea pledged to donate the sum of $10 billion to Africa in foreign aid by 2030. Similarly, during the Italy-Africa Summit, Italy pledged over $5 billion in investment in Africa. However, reports over the years have shown that all these agreements made during a summit between one country and Africa are usually defaulted. Interestingly, Africa keeps its end of the bargain by allowing these countries access to its minerals, but these countries do not remit the financial pledges made. So, while they benefit, Africa gets nothing in return. What then is the way forward? Right now, Africa is the future because it has both the human and the mineral resources the world needs. Therefore, African leaders should realize that they are in the best position to make Africa better than it has been. Instead of going to summits and signing ridiculous agreements which do not benefit the continent, why don't these leaders focus on industrializing their country? Since the continent has critical minerals, what's stopping the government from investing in the technology that can foster industrialization? If Africa will ever get better, it's time for African leaders to continue doing the same thing over and over again. Instead of giving out critical minerals in exchange for foreign aid, why not sign agreements that will ensure that these countries build factories in the countries that will create job opportunities and also transform technology and innovation? If South Korea is thinking of developing its battery industry with African minerals, then African countries should also think of developing its battery industry as well. It's time to put a stop to acting the way the world expects Africa to act. The question is, will African leaders ever change? Is there any hope for the continent? What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video.